BJ Penn is one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. He's a former two-time UFC welterweight champion, former UFC lightweight champion, and a member of the UFC Hall of Fame. He earned his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in under 3 years of training and was the first non-Brazilian winner of the black belt division of the World Jiu-Jitsu Championship at just 20 years old. BJ hasn't fought since July 6th of 2014. This Sunday, against a surging 9-1 Yair Rodriguez, a 24-year-old Taekwondo black belt currently ranked at number 10 in the world at featherweight by the UFC, he makes his return. And he shouldn't. It breaks my heart when a great fighter sticks around too long. Chuck Liddell was 20-3, knocking out everyone in front of him to defend his UFC light heavyweight title until he was derailed in brutal fashion by Rampage Jackson in 2007. He'd go 1-4 over the next 3 years, retiring after having been KO'd for the third time in a row. Ken Shamrock was once known as the world's most dangerous man. He was an animal in Pancrase and a staple of the early years of the UFC. He's gone 2-8 over the last 12 years with losses to the 12-9 Robert Berry and the 10-16 Mike Bork. Let's talk about BJ's record. At 16-10-2, it doesn't look excellent on paper. We can sidestep the ugly number based on the fact that many UFC legends have ugly records. Randy Couture retired at 19-11. Dan Henderson recently stepped away from the sport with a mark of 32-15. All of BJ's losses have come at the hands of elite level fighters. George St. Pierre beat BJ twice. Frankie Edgar beat him 3 times. BJ Penn even lost a decision to Lyoto Machida at heavyweight. These are all top guys, far from bums. But it doesn't change the fact that BJ is just 1-5-1 across his last 7 outings. His last win came at the hands of a highly diminished Matt Hughes 7 years ago. Hughes retired less than a year after that fight. BJ isn't going to tarnish his legacy. It's already been cemented. What he can do, though, is take more damage to his body and brain for no reason other than delusional thinking. Even though he's only been finished 3 times across his 10 losses, that doesn't mean those were the only fights where he took heavy damage. Nick Diaz and Rory McDonald ravaged BJ's body with punches in their fights. Frankie Edgar split BJ's skull like a coconut in their 2014 contest. And these are just his last 3 fights. In an age where more and more young NFL players are retiring due to fear of brain damage, in an age where more and more former athletes are literally committing suicide due to brain injury-related depression, the last thing I want to see is another one of the greats take a beating he doesn't have to take. There's a joke in online MMA circles about elite fighters and how you can tell they're ready to go. There's Chuck with that look in his eyes, as Mike Goldberg used to say about the Iceman in his prime. There's Sea-Level Kane, referring to how amazing former heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez looks when he's not fighting in the harsh climate of Mexico. And then there's Motivated BJ, which refers to the belief that BJ didn't always train hard, but when he does, it's game over for his opponent. Unfortunately, we have no reason to believe that Motivated BJ is the one we're going to see on Sunday. And why is that? Well, maybe it's because BJ has retired twice already. After a decision loss to Nick Diaz at UFC 137 in 2011, BJ told Joe Rogan, "Joe, this was probably the last time you're going to see me in here. I can't keep performing at the top level. I got a daughter and another daughter on the way, and I don't want to go home looking like this. I'm done." A year later at UFC on Fox 5, BJ returned and was brutalized in another decision loss, this time to Rory McDonald. UFC President Dana White said he'd like to see BJ retire. And months later, BJ told MMA journalist Ariel Helwani regarding his future, "My guess is probably a little better than yours, but I don't know." 2 years after Rory McDonald lost, BJ returned again, this time against Frankie Edgar, a man that had beaten him twice prior. BJ opened the fight in a bizarre, straight-up boxing stance that can only be described as something out of the 1920s put-up-your-dukes era. Edgar punished BJ standing and on the ground before finishing him with strikes in the 3rd round. At the post-fight press conference, BJ stated, "Of course, this is the end. I'm thinking to myself, why did you step back into the octagon after the beating that Rory McDonald gave you? And the reason is that I really needed to find out if I could still do it. And I know now that I can't." Where do you fall in the BJ Penn return? Do you feel as though he's given it his all and should stay retired? Or do you think it's his right to continue fighting well past his prime just because he wants to? Let me know in the comments below and give your prediction on the fight. See you next time.